Live from New Delhi, watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Modi participating G7 summit in Kananaskis to share his thoughts on key global issues. We'll also be emphasizing the priorities of the Global South. PM Modi holds bilateral meeting with world leaders on the sidelines of the G7 summit, discusses avenues to deepen ties. G7 leaders urge de-escalation but stop short of calling for Israel-Iran ceasefire. Israel and Iran exchange fire again, the fifth day of strikes in their most intense confrontation in history. US President Donald Trump convenes National Security Council meeting. As part of Canada's 2025 G7 presidency, Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 Outreach Summit in Canada's Kananaskis. This is India's 12th participation in the G7 summit and PM Modi's 6th consecutive participation at the summit. 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of the first G7 summit. And Prime Minister Modi met Mexico's President Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo on the sidelines of the 51st G7 summit in Kananaskis, Canada. This was the first meeting between the two leaders. Both sides discussed avenues to further deepen cooperation in trade, pharmaceuticals, science and technology, digital innovation, and shared perspectives on key global and regional issues, including priorities of the Global South. Prime Minister Modi also met Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz on the sidelines of the summit. And PM Modi met South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on the margins of the summit. Also, PM Modi met his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese on the sidelines of the G7 summit taking place in Kananaskis, Canada. Prime Minister Modi met the President of South Korea Lee Jae-myung on the sidelines of the 51st G7 summit in Kananaskis. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to deepening the India-South Korea special strategic partnership by exploring new avenues for cooperation through partnerships in areas of trade and economy, critical and emerging technologies, green hydrogen, shipbuilding, culture and people-to-people exchanges, among others. They also discussed regional and global issues. France will host the next G7 summit as the Alpine Spa resort town of Evian-les-Bains in 2026. French President Emmanuel Macron said on Tuesday. Bordering Switzerland on the shores of Lake Geneva, Evian already hosted the G7 in 2003. It was also the first time that Russia had been invited to join, although it was kicked out of the group in 2014 after it annexed Crimea from Ukraine. The leaders of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States and the European Union will meet in the summer of 2026. Now, the group of 7 nations have expressed support for Israel and labeled its rival Iran as a source of instability in West Asia. In a statement issued late on Monday, the leaders called for peace and stability in the region. The joint statement, backed by Trump and released by Canada, urged that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in West Asia, including a ceasefire in Gaza. The statement also said that Israel has a right to defend itself and stressed the importance of the protection of civilians as the growing attacks kill civilians on both sides. Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States also shared their conviction that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Amid escalating tensions between Iran and Israel, former U.S. President Donald Trump has stirred fresh controversy. Taking to social media, Trump claimed that the U.S. knows the exact location of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calling him an easy target, but added that he won't be taken out, at least for now. Trump also asserted that the U.S. controls the skies over Iran and praised the effectiveness of U.S.-made weaponry, though stopped short of directly naming Israel. Right, let's get you some more latest visuals of the Prime Minister's bilateral meeting with world leaders on the margins of the G7 summit taking place in Kananaskis, Canada. Here we can see the Prime Minister interacting with his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese and also having a tete-a-tete with the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. So there you can see the meeting taking place among the leaders of India, Australia and South Africa on the margins of the Group of 7 summit taking place this year in Kananaskis, Canada. Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff Abdul Rahim Mousavi has issued a stark warning to Israeli civilians. In a televised statement, Mousavi urged residents of Tel Aviv and Haifa to evacuate immediately, citing imminent punitive operations against Israel. He stressed that previous Iranian strikes were meant only as deterrents, but hinted that the next wave could be far more serious. Meanwhile, Trump is convening a meeting of his National Security Council on Tuesday to discuss the Iran-Israel hostilities. The meeting comes after sudden large-scale deployment of U.S. Air Force aerial refueling aircraft on 16th June. Reports are rapidly emerging about the movement of U.S. fighter jets. The Indian Embassy in Tel Aviv has issued an advisory for nationals in Israel to stay vigilant and follow safety protocols. In the advisory, it says that Indians intending to leave should use land crossings and register with the embassy for assistance. The Embassy of India has also activated its helpline numbers 24/7 to provide assistance to Indian nationals. Those needing help or information can call on these numbers +972 5475 20711 or +972 54327 8392. Also on the email cons1.telaviv@mea.gov.in. In addition, Indian nationals who remain in Israel and have not yet registered with the embassy have been strongly urged to do so immediately via the registration portal https:/Indian-national_reg. Now, Ukraine on Tuesday slammed the lack of an adequate reaction from the world to Russia's strikes on its soil after an attack on Kyiv killed at least 16 people. The European Commission has proposed the EU bans all Russian gas and liquefied natural gas imports by the end of 2027, with a ban on short-term contracts starting next year. Britain too announced further sanctions against Russia. Here's a report.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict drags on, the Kremlin on Tuesday said that there was no understanding of when the next direct negotiations with Kyiv would take place, adding Russia had fulfilled all its obligations agreed to in previous talks held in Istanbul on June 2. The Kremlin also made it clear that Russia would assess the possible time frame for continuing negotiations in the coming days. Amid all this, Russia fired scores of missiles and drones at Kyiv on Tuesday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky alleged that at least 16 people were killed in what he thought was one of the most horrific attacks on the capital. According to Zelensky, Russia sent more than 440 drones and 32 missiles at Ukraine.
Let's take you live to Kananaskis for a family photograph of the G7 Outreach Summit, in which world leaders, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, are attending. There we can see Prime Minister Modi along with the other world leaders at the family photograph on the occasion of the 51st G7 Summit and the Outreach Summit in Kananaskis, Canada. Remember, it's the 6th consecutive time that Prime Minister Modi has been invited to a G7 Outreach Summit that's taking place this year, the 51st edition of the grouping at Kananaskis in Canada. These are the latest visuals coming to you from Kananaskis, where the 51st G7 Summit and the Outreach Summit is taking place, and there we can see Prime Minister Modi along with the other world leaders dispersing after posing for a family photograph. If you're just tuning in, these are the latest visuals coming to you from Kananaskis of the family photograph of world leaders attending the G7 Outreach Summit that includes India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Right, moving on to some other news we are tracking here on DD India Live. Severe weather events is leaving a trail of destruction. Floods, landslides and storms are claiming lives and displacing families, with climate change intensifying the impact. Here's a look at how different regions are being impacted.
Across the world and also in India, severe weather is wreaking havoc. Heavy rains, floods, and landslides have damaged homes, displaced families, and taken lives. Countries are struggling to deal with these disasters as weather patterns become more unpredictable. In Congo's capital Kinshasa, at least 29 people have died due to heavy weekend rains causing floods and landslides across the capital. Drone footage reveals submerged streets and collapsed buildings as mourning families sift through the wreckage. Poor urban planning, deforestation, and inadequate drainage have intensified the impact of heavy rains, which experts warn may intensify due to climate change. Devastation struck in West Virginia as torrential rainfall destroyed an apartment building, leaving at least 6 dead and 2 missing. The landslide-stricken town of Borca di Cadore in northern Italy, where access to parts of the area has been cut off and dozens of residents have been forced to evacuate. Emergency crews are working to restore connections, though no injuries have been reported. As the southwest monsoon continues its advance, several parts of India are experiencing widespread rainfall, bringing both relief and disruption. Parts of the national capital received light to moderate rain, bringing much needed relief from the recent heat wave. Temperatures have dipped slightly and more showers are predicted over the next few days. The India Meteorological Department has issued weather alerts in multiple states, warning of heavy to very heavy rainfall, thunderstorms, and strong winds in the coming days. Bureau Report, DD India.
Technical snags disrupted multiple Air India flights just days after a deadly crash in Ahmedabad that claimed hundreds of lives. From engine faults to widespread cancellations, the aviation sector faces mounting scrutiny. Meanwhile, grieving families performed the last rites of the victims of last week's disaster as investigators search for answers amid rising concerns over passenger safety and aircraft reliability. DD India's Mehur Makuri has the details.
Just days after Air India's London-bound flight tragically crashed in Ahmedabad, killing hundreds, a troubling wave of technical snags is rippling through the aviation industry, affecting domestic as well as international travels. On Tuesday, an Air India flight from San Francisco to Mumbai reported a technical fault in one of its engines. As a safety measure, passengers were directed to disembark at Kolkata airport. Also, a London-bound Air India flight from Ahmedabad was cancelled due to aircraft unavailability, triggered by airspace restrictions and heightened technical inspections of the fleet. Air India also cancelled another London-bound flight, the one from Bengaluru, for unspecified reasons. The disruption saga did not end there. A London-Amritsar Air India flight was also cancelled. A Paris-bound Air India flight from Delhi also got cancelled after a pre-flight check flagged an issue. Meanwhile, on Monday, an Air India Express flight from Delhi to Ranchi was forced to return shortly after takeoff. Mid-air, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 was suspected of developing a technical fault. After landing and undergoing inspection, the aircraft was later cleared for further operations. Even as these new glitches emerge, the families of last week's crash victims gathered in grief and heartbreak, many receiving the remains of their loved ones in an emotionally wrenching farewell. In Ahmedabad, hospital officials have now identified over 160 victims through DNA analysis of their remains. With over 100 families having reclaimed the bodies of their loved ones, last rites are quietly being performed across the nation. In Mumbai, grief hung heavy in the air as the remains of Captain Sumit Sabharwal, one of the pilots aboard Air India Flight 171, arrived at his family home. With a heart filled with grief and tear-filled eyes, the father of Captain Sabharwal bid his beloved son a goodbye. As India mourns the death of her people, along with the citizens of Portugal, UK and other nations, the aviation authorities grapple with a growing list of technical concerns. while investigators continue to rummage through the debris to ascertain the cause of last week's disaster. Mihir Makhuri for DD India.
Yoga has become popular in Spain, with people embracing it for its physical, mental and spiritual benefits. Spain ranks among the top European countries for yoga's popularity, thanks to its beautiful landscapes, wellness culture and growing number of retreats and studios. DD India's Atman Sandhu has more.
The journey of yoga in Spain began to rise significantly in the late 20th century, fueled by Indian gurus traveling through Europe and the translation of yogic texts into Spanish. Over the last 2 decades, yoga schools rooted in classical Indian traditions like Hatha and Ashtanga have flourished alongside contemporary Western adaptations such as aerial yoga and vinyasa flow.
I opened the studio of yoga 4 years ago to create a bit of a presence for our Madrid yogis here. The studio is all about finding your inner peace, and that's the main thing I myself find through the practice.
In the last 10 years, I've seen how popular yoga is in Spain. Today, Spain has the highest population of people performing yoga daily. And I find it incredible the response that we get from the people in yoga in Spain.
Today, Spain boasts more than 1,500 yoga studios and thousands of certified instructors. Indian diplomatic missions and cultural centers, especially the Embassy of India in Madrid, have played a crucial role in fostering awareness through events, workshops, and the International Day of Yoga, which draws thousands in cities across the country.
I'm very proud to see how yoga has been received in Spain, having been celebrated in our royal palace in a huge way for the last 10 years. I'm Spanish. I was born here. I've been brought up here, but my mother is Indian. And yoga is my way of keeping connected with my roots, with my culture.
I've never done yoga in India, but after coming here, I was so happy to discover that yoga is very common here as well. And I really like the way they embraced and like it spread very widely over here, and it motivated me to start doing yoga here. And as a student living abroad, like I got a sense of comfort.
Indian origin teachers and Spanish practitioners trained in India have helped preserve authenticity. Many Spaniards are now exploring pranayam, Ayurveda, and even Sanskrit. As Spain continues to embrace yoga with open arms, India's ancient wisdom finds itself not only practiced but deeply respected. This is Atman Sandhu in Spain for DD India.
India is witnessing a silent revolution, one that places its 10.45 crore tribals at the heart of national development. India has shifted its approach from symbolic recognition to systemic empowerment, marking a new chapter in the nation's progress. With a substantial budget increase for the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, some key initiatives are driving socio-economic transformation across the country. One of the most significant developments has been the implementation of the Forest Rights Act, which gives tribals legal ownership of ancestral lands. Additionally, education programs in the indigenous languages and sustainable livelihood initiatives are empowering communities like never before. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.